Command of evidence questions basically break out into two different prompts. One asks you to find the answer that supports or weakens a claim or a hypothesis in the text. Or the second presentation, it asks you to find the quote that best illustrates the statement made in the text. And usually the text there is a little bit shorter than the support weaken claims. Now, of course, command of evidence includes graphs, tables, charts. We separate that out in a separate category, so that won't be part of this video. That will be a separate video, command of evidence quantitative. Those questions are so different that we'll keep it for a separate video and discussion. So let's begin with an example of the supports weakens prompt within the command of evidence. Always read the question first. So I want to find which of the statements below, if true, so we can assume they're true. And in this case, we want to support the student's claim. So I'm going to look for the student's claim as I read through the idea here in the text. Born in 1891 to a Quechua-speaking family in the Andes Mountains of Peru, Martin Chambi is today considered to be one of the most renowned figures of Latin American photography. In a paper for an art history class, a student claims that Chambi's photographs have considerable ethnographic value. So this is the claim. His work has ethnographic value. Not sure what that is, but they do have a long dash, which is going to give me further explanation or information about what exactly that is. In his work, Chambi was able to capture diverse elements of Peruvian society, representing his subjects with dignity and authenticity. So that's what ethnographic value is. That equals this, basically. Okay? So, all right, I understand what ethnographic value is. I understand the claim. Now I want the answer that shows that his work captures diverse elements of society with dignity and authenticity. And let's find the matching example. Chambi took many commissioned portraits of wealthy Peruvians, but he also produced hundreds of images carefully documenting the people, sites, and customs of indigenous communities. So he took wealthy Peruvians and indigenous community photos. That's diversity. And he did it with dignity and authenticity, carefully documenting the people and took portraits. This is your correct answer. Here we have an example of which finding would directly weaken the underlined claim. Okay, we don't actually have an underlined claim above. Don't know why it says that, but we want to weaken the claim here. So again, as we read it, we'll figure out the claim. We always want to identify what is the claim. So read the question, figure out what we need to do, weaken in this case. Then we're going to read the full paragraph, get the idea here, and identify the claim. So we can then figure out the answer in relation to that claim. So in the 1970s, a roughly 60,000-year-old piece of hyena bone marked with 9 notches was discovered at a site in western France, once inhabited by Neanderthals. Although many believe that only modern humans developed systems for notating numbers, one archaeologist asserts that this artifact may be a sign that Neanderthals also recorded in numerical information. The notches on the bone are unevenly spaced, but approximately parallel, and microscopic analysis reveals that they were made with a single stone tool. According to the archaeologist, this suggests that the notches were all made at one time by one individual as a means of counting. So our claim is right there. The notches in these bones were a means of counting. It was kind of like a calculator or an abacus back way back before there were either of those. So what example would show that this is not true? The bones were not used as a calculator. And that's what I want to find for my answer. Parallel lines are a common feature in modern humans' early systems for recording numerical information. That says nothing to help to defeat the argument. If anything, that might help us because the lines were parallel. So this is opposite, typical answer choice. So there are a few typical answer choices we always want to look for in elimination. Opposite the idea, it's irrelevant to the idea. Maybe it has information that's just simply not evidenced in the text, even though it might seem plausible. Or it's extreme language. These are typical elimination procedures. So B, more than 9 approximately parallel notches made with different stones are present in another artifact found at a site in western France. Well, no, that doesn't help us. It just tells that there are more of them that were made. Nothing about our claim, which is that it's basically an ancient calculator. Okay. C, it would have taken careful effort to make evenly spaced lines on bone with the stone tools typically used by Neanderthals. Okay, that doesn't tell us anything about the purpose of it. D, decorative art discovered at another Neanderthal site in Western France primarily features patterns of unevenly spaced parallel lines. So here we find this same kind of thing happening with bones, and it's decorative art. It's not a calculator. This would weaken the argument. That's your answer. You might be wondering, given the last example, could I not have just read the underlined or the claim portion itself without everything else, and then be able to answer the question, thus saving some time? Perhaps. Let's take a look at this underlined case. So which finding would directly or most directly challenge the assumption? Again, that's a little different wording, but that means weaken. We want to weaken the claim. So what's the claim in the underlined portion here, the underlined sentence? Let's just read the sentence by itself. Many ecologists have assumed that domed nests would provide protection from weather conditions and thus would allow species that build them to have larger geographic ranges than species that build nests do. So what do we have here? If you have a domed nest, and my terrible drawing of a domed nest with its little door in it means you can go farther. Is that true? Well, let's check the answer choices. Species that build nests tend to have higher extinction rates. Not about extinction rates, that's irrelevant. Species that build open nests tend to be smaller in size. Nope, not about smaller in size. That's irrelevant. Do you go further or not? That's the claim. Species that build nests tend to use fewer materials than, no, we don't care about the number of materials or amount. Species that build open nests tend to have larger ranges than species. Wait, this would definitely counter our claim that a domed nest is a larger range. If a species that builds open nests goes further, that does counter our claim. I did not, in that case, have to read the whole paragraph. Okay, let's look at another quick example, see if we can get away with just reading the underlined section or the hypothesis, claim, conclusion that's outlined in the question itself. So here we want to support the team's conclusion. Well, the conclusion is easily identified here toward the end that concluded that BOVB is indeed transmitted from snakes to frogs, either directly or indirectly via HT. So is that enough to answer the question? BOVB can be transmitted across frogs through HT? Well, that's not from snakes to frogs. Parasites known to feed on species of snakes and frogs in which the BOVB gene occurs also carry BOVB. I don't know anything how that's related at all. BOVB cannot reliably transmitted from a snake species to bacteria that are usually encountered by frog species. Don't know, obviously, how that fits in. Frog species with BOVB show few discernible advantages as compared with frog species that do not carry. Don't know how that feeds into the conclusion. So in this case, it's not underlined, but it's a clear conclusion that it can be defined from the text is not enough to answer the question. So again, I generally recommend reading the entire passage on any of these reading prompts, whether it's inferences, main idea, or command of evidence. Read everything. So in this case, what I probably really need is to understand what this HT is and some background, so then I can then discern what is the correct answer from those ideas. The second type of prompt you're going to run into on command of evidence is which quote most effectively illustrates the claim. So you're going to choose which of the quotes among the answer choices, as you see below, illustrates a claim. Now, it's not going to clearly say what the claim is, kind of like the support weekends indicate this is the claim, this is the hypothesis in the text. It's just going to be a shorter string of text, maybe only 1 or 2 lines typically, and that's going to denote the claim in it. So in this case, let's go ahead and see what happens. The Young Girl is a 1920 short story by Catherine Mansfield. Good. All right. Good information to get the background. Always read that. In the short story, the narrator takes an unnamed 17-year-old girl and her younger brother out for a meal. In describing the teenager, Mansfield frequently contrasts the character's pleasant appearance with her unpleasant attitude, as when Mansfield writes of the teenager blank, the quote. This is essentially the claim right here. She contrasts the pleasant appearance with her unpleasant attitude. So by the way, whenever we compare contrast, we have to include 2 things. Oftentimes in wrong answer choices, we'll just have one of those things. And for example, we might look at answer choice C. I saw that after she couldn't stand this place a moment longer, and indeed she jumped up and turned away while I went through the vulgar act of paying for the tea. Well, that kind of shows she's unpleasant, but there's nothing in there about a pleasant appearance, just an unpleasant attitude. So I have to have both parts in there for a correct comparison. And we see that a lot. So a lot of times I might have cat bad, dog good, and a wrong answer will say cats are not very good. Well, that can't be right. It has to be something like dogs are better than cats. You have to have both parts in there. So let's keep looking at the other answers here. I heard her murmur, I can't bear flowers on a table. Okay, kind of unpleasant attitude. They had evidently been giving her intense pain, for she positively closed her eyes. I moved away. Bad attitude, no pleasant appearance in there. B. While we waited, she took out a little gold powder box with a mirror in the lid, shook the poor little puff as though she had loathed it, and dabbed her lovely nose. So she has a lovely nose and she's interested in her appearance. This does show pleasant appearance. By the way, she loathed it. She has this attitude. It's an unpleasant attitude. This includes both. This is going to be the right answer. The other one says she didn't even take off her gloves. She lowered her eyes and drummed on the table. When a faint violin sounded, she winced and bit her lip again. Again, that shows unpleasant attitude, but nowhere does it show she has a pleasant appearance. We need to see both on any type of compare-contrast question. In many cases, our quotes or the claims we need to illustrate will be from Shakespeare or poetry. So let's look at one of those examples. King Lear is circa 1606 play by William Shakespeare. In the play, the character of King Lear attempts to test his three daughters' devotion to him. This is the claim we need to illustrate. Note, it didn't say what the claim is, but you have to figure that out from the text. So he later expresses regret for this action. Is evident when. So what am I looking for? He wanted to test their devotion to him, but obviously he did something he regretted doing, and he's expressing regret. So I need two things here. I need to see that he tested the devotion and he regrets it. These should be in the answer choices. So A, says of himself, I am a man more sinned against than sinning. So that's just saying whether he's good or bad. That doesn't show regret. There's nothing in there about testing devotion. B, says during a growing storm, this tempest will not give me to leave to ponder on things would hurt me more. This tempest, not sure what the tempest is here. And tempest is usually a storm. You're testing devotion of his daughters, not really a storm. So no, that doesn't meet both conditions. Says to himself while striking his head. Okay, that's not good. He's striking his head. He's upset with himself because he's beating himself about something. That could show regret. Beat at this gate that let thy folly in and thy dear judgment out. So folly in, bad decisions in, dear judgment out, good judgment out. So yeah, he's regretting some action he did. Maybe that was testing his three daughters' devotion. This is probably the right answer. D, says of himself, I will do such things, what they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. Well, no, I don't think regretting an action of something he did and he wished he didn't do with his daughters, a terror of the earth. No, that's not going to be the right idea.